All right, so now that we have a feel for the model of what a sonata in A minor, what the exposition of a sonata in A minor should look like, let's get into the weeds here and let's actually look at a piece. So we're going to look at this Mozart A minor sonata. It's over here, as I said, it's got this really great main theme. Sounds kind of like this. Right? Something like that. So again, I say this all the time, but if you have not listened to this piece already on its own, you really need to do that. So do not watch the rest of this video until you have listened to this piece and followed along with the scores to make sure that you're totally familiar with all the sounds. So now that you've listened to it for sure, I'm over here. I've got the score, and I also over here have my sketch of what's going to go on. So we'll refer to this as we go through, just to be really clear about everything that's happening, so that we're not getting sort of lost in all the specifics that are actually on the score here. So, okay. We should hopefully be getting really, really comfortable with finding the end of a main theme. And there are a lot of ways that we can do that. We've talked a lot about the fact that they should stay in the home key the whole time and end with a cadence in the home key. And this one does not disappoint. So we've got our melody, right? A lot of prominent features in this melody that'll keep coming up for us for sure, right? Right? The dotted rhythm continues. You can sort of feel we're breaking out of that. And then listen here, and you can really tell from the left hand. Look at the left hand. Oops, sorry. What is it? D. And then lands. Right, starts again. So that left hand. Right? That's a cadence, right? Because we've got a nice little 2-6, cadential 6-4 to 7, and then end. Now, it is worth pointing out here that it would be easy to say, well, yes, that's a cadence, but we're still in the home key, and we've got the main theme again. Right? We get that again. But that's where we have to remind ourselves that it's the cadence in the home key that really, really ends the main theme. And it's very common to get a repeat of the main theme at the beginning of the transition. So if we look here at the model, we've got our main theme, right? We sort of had that pedal A at the bottom of this. Right, that's all there. We can see the A on the bottom of these chords, right? So we had all that. We had our melody. We got to the 2-6, cadential 6-4, and then right at the beginning of the transition, you can see I put in parentheses here, we get that main theme, that basic idea repeated again. So when you're listening for a cadence to end the main theme, you can also use a repeat of the main theme melody or the basic idea as a good indicator of where the transition begins, right? So it's easy to look at this and hear, oh, look, here comes our main theme again in measure 9. We must still be in the main theme area. But that's the repeat of the basic idea, the repeat of the main theme melody at the start of the transition. And one way you can tell that it's not it's not the main theme anymore is that if we were to compare measure by measure, here's measure 1 to measure 9, right? Or that's 1 and 2 to 9 and 10 here, right? These are basically the same, but look at what happens here on the next repeat. Right? That's measure 3 and 4, and then, but look, those correspond to these measures. And look what happens here. Instead of staying on the same chord, we go somewhere else. So 3 and 4 end on this 5 chord again. Right? But in here, we get this measure. This is measure 12, where it's clear that we're going somewhere else, right? And things are off to the races. So transitions often feature the main theme melody at the start, but then a couple measures in, here it's measure 12, so 3 measures in, we start moving in a different direction. And in this case, it's with a 5 of 6 chord. Right? It's a C dominant 7 chord, which is pushing towards F. F is 6 in the key of A minor. So we're sort of moving away. It's also worth noting, we've had a couple of these already. This would be an example of an authentic cadence that is elided. This is an elided perfect authentic cadence, meaning that the end of this one phrase, right? Here's the motion, right? 2 6, cadential 6 4 1, right? So the end of the cadence is the downbeat of measure 9, but the downbeat of measure 9 is also the beginning of the transition, and so that's an elided cadence. It's not the same. An elided cadence isn't the same like type of structure as a half cadence or an authentic cadence, right? It's not a different type of cadence. It's a way of doing a cadence. You can elide the cadence, or you can have a cadence where it completely stops. And I think you can hear in this piece why that would sound terrible, right? This piece has so much motion, right? It's very active. If you didn't know what was going on, this could be like the start of a really cool 80s song. Like if you had sort of like one of these. It almost sounds like a Supertramp song, right? Anyway, Mozart and Supertramp, who knew? So this would sound really terrible if we got to this D-dum, what is it? Yeah, if we got to the D-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-dum. And then it started again. It wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. So the elision keeps that momentum going forward. Okay. Now, in the transition, we start moving a lot of places. We had our 5 of 6, which on 13 gets us to this thing with A on top. We start moving around. We got a 5 of 2. You can see I'm analyzing this as us moving all around. And you can hear that it's this very modulatory section, right? With lots of motion. And that fits because transitions are all about moving us along. Now, when we get... So that was sort of all this stuff. We got all these other cool chords here, a lot of motion. This sort of section sort of ends the activity for a bit before, right? And then we get this nice, very active in measure 16, right? And we got this main theme dotted rhythm thing again, right? Right? And we're repeating that. And then very active. So, what's going on here tonally? Well, we've been moving around, and all of that chromatic stuff was actually secretly taking us to C major. So, by measure 14, we've already kind of made our way to C major. It happens very subtly, but like I said, we're back here. This is in sort of A minor still. 5 of 6. 6. Here's that, which is a D minor chord, which is kind of 2 in C major. Then we've got 5 of 2. So here's real 2. Now look, 5, 1. But the sneaky thing here on this 2, 5, 1 is this D sharp, which is very C minor-y, right? So we're not really landing, but by 16 here, look at where we've landed. Look at that left hand. What's the bottom note of this passage here? So we've got G just sticking around, right? Oops, sorry. It goes up there. We've got G. That's a dominant pedal, right? So we have a dominant pedal on G, which is 5 of C. So again, we had this little sneaky C minor thing, and now we've got a dominant pedal. And look at the right hand. Yes, we've got a lot of G stuff, and we've got G, 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 C. Love it. But what do the B flat and the A flat suggest? And what does the E flat in the left hand? What is that on measure 17, right here where we land? What should stand out about that? Well, once again, we're on C minor. So we've got this modal mixture thing going on again in the transition, because we know that the modulation to the relative major or to the secondary key is probably going to happen in the middle of the transition section. And it certainly does here. The transition begins for us in measure 9, and we start moving around, and we sort of have made our way to C by measure 14. But again, the transition is about creating separation. It's about creating distance from the main theme to the secondary key area, both tonally and thematically, motivically. And so one of the things that can create that distance is to go into the modally mixed secondary key area. And so here we're in C minor for all of this. And look how extended this pedal point is. That G stays in the bass, even here, right? And in measure 22, we kind of land on G, right? Half cadence to end the transition. Big old half cadence right here. And that's how the transition ends. So we still have not really landed on C major, which was what makes the beginning here of the secondary key area, right? This very light, playful, right? With these little lovely, very sort of playful, right? With this very, very, very mobile theme here. So that's the beginning of our secondary key area. I really should be writing this stuff in. Sorry, I haven't been doing that. Now that since I've got the thing, the chart over there. Main theme 1 to 9. Nope, 1 to 8. Sorry. So we got the main theme going from 1 to 9 here. We've got the transition going from 9 to 23. And that all matches up with the model that we had. Remember, that's the big thing here, is making sure that we can sort of find our way through the complicating elements of these pieces by matching it up with the model that we built. So now, time to ask some questions about the secondary key area. As we know, we're in C major. This is really our first arrival in C major. And we talked about in the model saying, what are the things that can distinguish one ska section to the next? Well, we said it's either going to be by cadences or by different themes. And more than likely, it's some combination of those two ideas. But that's the kind of idea we want to be looking for. So if we look here, like I said, we've got this playful theme thing, right? Whatever it is. Right? It's sort of this jumpy, or not jumpy, but like very motion-filled kind of thing. Not exactly like the most singable melody, but it's still an identifiable thematic idea. So we start in 23. As we continue, texture-wise, right, that all continues. And we could certainly say, okay, we got some left-hand stuff, right, building some harmony, and then we switch into the bass clef here, 25. And if we look at it, look. That feels like a cadence. So it's easy to say, okay, well, 26 must be the end of our first ska section. But then we have to say that nothing changes, right? That continues. The right hand is still doing all this stuff. If we look at 27, right, it's a little different, right? But nothing really is happening. And so this doesn't feel like a cadence given the fact that nothing changes. Here, left hand starts doing some little bit more tonally minded stuff. And now look again. Here we go in 30. It feels like we're about to resolve. But look at the left hand, or the right hand, sorry. We got this B flat, which then takes us on 32, right, to an F major chord. So even this, if you just look at that left hand part, it would be tempting to think we might have hit a cadence. We've got some resolution to tonic here, but that tonic takes us to 4. So that, again, isn't doing anything. And then in 33, let's look at the left hand here. Now we're getting somewhere. It's a big old 2-6 chord. So if we sort of write that in, big old 2-6 chord, right? And this, going back up here again, let's look at this harmony. We've already hit a 2-6 chord, and so we thought 2-6 is often a good moment to think, well, are we heading for a cadence? 2-6. Don't tell theory teachers everywhere, but sometimes Mozart doesn't do what he's supposed to. He has a 2 chord going to a 1 chord. Getting back to a 2 chord here. To a 5. 5 right here. Sort of 5 to, I'll write it in 5 to 5-6, right? And then 1 going to, as we said, with that B flat up top. 1, that's just a little passing tone there. Going to a 5-6-5 of 4 before landing on 4 here. So we can see if we investigate the harmony, even though there's not much to go on thematically here, right? Like this isn't a melody per se, right? This isn't the same as this kind of, right, clear melodic voice, right? We have to use the harmony because that's what's telling us. And we want to be looking here. Yes, we have a little cadential idea, but nothing changes enough to make us think this is a new section. So we can latch onto the harmony here, push, 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 push. We think we might have it, but we don't because we get to 4. But then here, this 2-6, which again, gateway to a cadence, and then look in 34. Now that's a cadence, right? So if we look in measure 34 here, that's a big old rectangle. We don't want that. If we look in measure 34, we got cadential 6-4 to 7. Let's see how I did on lining that up. A little more space. Right? And that lands. And so we've got a cadence. So the question is, do we have new thematic ideas? And if we look at the right hand, we would think, well, crap, no, we don't. Because again, it's this jumpy stuff going on. But look at the left hand. We haven't had this little motive before. Right? And as we look down, we say, maybe that's not enough to go on. But as we continue, it switches into the right hand and establishes itself as a little motivic idea. So this is an example of where neither the melodic or motivic material nor the harmonic cadential material could sort of clarify this on its own. But if we take them together, we can see introduction of a new melodic idea after the most compelling cadence that we've had yet in this section. That tells us that measure 35 is the beginning of ska 2, right? So measure 35 is the beginning of ska 2. I'm just going to put that right here. If I go back up here, that means measure 34 is the end of ska 1. So we had 23 to 34. And again, coming over here to the map, that's what we have been saying. It's a combination of melodic motivic and harmonic cadential stuff. And so there's not really, you can see in my notes up here, there's not really much melodically to talk about. But harmonically, we can follow this and see that we hit that 2-6 chord in 28, right? Let's move this over a little bit so we can see up here in 28, we hit this 2-6 chord to the 1-6. Had a little cadence, but that was sort of spoiled. But we finally get in 34 this big old cadential 6-4 thing, taking us there, and that's really nice. So now the question is, how long does ska 2 last? We said that we've got a little bit of a melody to go on, not a ton, but again, we can sort of follow the harmony. Right here, it starts to open up a little bit. Here's a little 1-6. And we said there it switches into the right hand. right? Oh, what is it? Dee da da. And now look at in measure 44 here. This is where we start to see some clarification here. Right? That's what I would call a pretty clear cadence. And it's guided by not a hugely singable melody, but there is a clear focus on this motive. Bum, 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 switches to the right hand, bum, 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 right? So just like we didn't really have a super strong melodic thing going on here, we again don't hear, but we can really, our ears can cling to that. That's enough of a surface level change separated by enough of a clear cadential marker and ended by enough of a clear cadential marker, again, in C major, for us to tell that measure 44 is the end of ska 2. There's 44. Oops, I deleted the little dash. We need the dash, people. And so that means ska 3 would just take up the last handful of measures here, starting in measure 45. Ska 3 starts in measure 45. And we can actually tell where ska 3 ends because it's the end of the exposition. We get to the repeat. So 46, 7, 8, 9, 45, 49. This is a very short little ska section, but it's still worth pointing out. So just to go back to the chart, ska 1 takes up a lot of time, not a lot of melody. Follow the harmony. Ska 2, again, we're in 3. We're in C major this whole time, so we have to follow these internal cadences or these melodic shifts, bum, 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 to clarify, get a nice cadence here going from 1, 6, da, 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 dum, there. And ska 3 takes us here to the end. The last little thing to point out about ska 3, we talked about this a bit in the Mozart F major, but often the last ska sort of has a role of playing the one more time role. And for this one, the one more time is bringing back the main theme once again. So we sort of get our cadence here, and the left hand continues on what's been the unifying feature for the whole ska section, right? These like very, very moving 16th note passages. But the right hand is calling back to the main theme, right? Right? This dotted rhythm. So that's that sort of fulfilling that one more time role that we often get in a ska, the last ska section in particular. One more time on the dotted rhythm. So that's how, in the absence of super clear motivic differences or super distinct melodies, we can combine subtle melodic changes with cadential material to map out a pretty clear 3 ska setup, with the first being 23 to 34, separated by a cadence for ska 2, 35 to 44, with ska 3 having a one more time, 45 to 49. Gives us a really nice structure. And again, if we went back and compared this to the model we made, we would have a main theme that ends on an authentic cadence, which we know in A minor, E to A, transition that begins with a statement of the main theme, goes into some modulatory stuff before eventually getting to C major, plays around a little more, often see some modal mixture there. We get a half cadence at the end of the transition, and then skas 1, 2, 3, all in C major, so we need a combination of cadential and motivic shifts to get us there. Very subtle, but if we follow that harmony and can equally as importantly notice places where a cadence does happen and places where a cadence does not happen. That was very important here, where it felt like we might be coming to a cadence, but nothing really changes. We felt like we could come to a cadence here, but a secondary dominant going to 4 keeps the phrase alive. And the subtle motivic change of ska 2 to give us a clarity that this isn't just another steady stream of 16th notes, and then a nice one more time for ska 3 to take us to the end. So we're going to learn about what goes on in a development section next before we dive into the development of this piece.